Good morning and welcome to the Poseidon STEM webinar series part 4 titled The Role of Technology in STEM and Future Trends in STEM Education. My name is Aisha Spragley, OST Professional Coordinator, and I'll be the moderator for this session. I'd now like to introduce you to today's presenter, Nefertari Strickland. Nefertari is a cyber technology strategist, military officer, adjunct professor who aligns with her communities through emerging technology initiatives in K-20 science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics education. And you can take it on.
Thank you, Aisha. I really appreciate you. And this week has been so busy for me. I can't imagine that you don't have any number of things on your calendar and your plate. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us for today's session. I show up first as a parent. I have 2 children, one in high school, the other in higher education. I'm also a soldier, an academic, and a technologist. You can see that from the presentation slides that we're sharing. In 2020, and all of the turmoil that we were experiencing during the pandemic and the challenges that both of my school-age children were experiencing, I established an education consultancy. Because as a parent, I couldn't enter the school building. I couldn't enter the classroom. And often I was in the next room over for my children, listening to what they were experiencing in virtual school. So Teachers And is the name of the organization. And you'll notice in the logo, there's an ampersand. It denotes collaboration because we believe that Pennsylvania deserves a world-class Pennsylvania-educated workforce. And we're working to make that belief a reality. We're providing access, connection, and sustainment. So you learned a little bit about me. I'd love to learn a little bit about who's in the virtual room. So if you don't mind dropping in the chat your name and what area of Pennsylvania you are in. Are you in Northeast, Northwest, Southwest, or Southeastern Pennsylvania? If you're elsewhere, drop an NJ for New Jersey or NY for New York, just to give us some situational awareness of who's in the virtual room, as well as reaction time for the virtual session chat dialogue. I'll give it a moment. Chester, PA. I see Philly is here. Welcome. Pittsburgh. So I'd like to say thank you to Contrella Moore, as well as the Poseidon team, IU16, and everybody that made today possible for inviting me to participate in this webinar series, because technology is a part of our everyday lives at this point, right? And it's not mutually exclusive from education. And I believe the highest use of technology for our kiddos is to deliver education and training that utilizes technology and data to provide an individually customized learning experience for students. We want to ensure that they're adapting to the students' learning needs. The programming needs to basically be the opposite of a one-size-fits-all in education to a more individualized model. So today, if we can move to the next slide, we're going to explore how the role of technology in STEM education is evolving. And you know, it's evolving faster than instructional material. So we had to have gotten creative over the last year or so with out-of-school time programming and how it connects to what's happening in the classroom. So STEM, S-T-E-M, has become a commonplace acronym representing 4 fields with an emphasis on innovation, problem solving, and critical thinking. Together, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics make up a popular and fast-growing industry when you take a look at how it shows up in the workforce. So today's session, I want to make sure that you develop some concept of how what you're doing in after school, before school, summer, out of school time programming can trace to what's happening in the classroom and possibly in other out of school time programs. So we'll peer into our crystal ball and take a look at some of these disruptive technologies that are propositioning to impact education. The children who participate in your out of school time programming sessions, I want you to think about for a moment the activities that involve technology. How does technology show up? If you'd like, and you can think of something to contribute, please use the chat function throughout this session, and let's try that now. So technology, how do you use technology in your out-of-school time program? I'm checking the chat now. Is there an iPad, cell phone usage, QR codes possibly? What about tech like 3D printers? We do coding with a partner. Thank you for sharing that. QR code surveys, computers, phones. Thank you. So often we think about how our students and the children that participate in our programming gain skills, knowledge, abilities that over time develop into support for their interests that lead to career pathways. Right now, there's a whole lot of investment and attention being paid into workforce development. How does that show up in how you fund your program or how you develop priorities for your program? So when we take a look at the next slide, there's a list of 25 STEM careers to explore. The list isn't exhaustive. I actually want to show you this list to demonstrate how limited it is. Do you see prompt engineer anywhere? What about genetic counselor? Or even crypto trader? It's not there. And it's interesting because not only do students lack exposure to existing STEM careers, they also lack exposure to future ones, some that don't even exist yet. I want to make sure that I'm clear that I don't want you to try to boil the ocean today. I don't want you to try to create a path for students to become professionals in careers that don't exist yet. Rather, I want you to make a note to yourself about where you see your participants in the future by way of skills, capabilities, mindsets. For me, cybersecurity was a career and a career pathway that didn't exist when I graduated from high school. Although I'm a practitioner today, I wasn't aware of the discipline. And there weren't any professionals or mentors that were in place for me to learn from. So I essentially had to be flexible, build my career as I flew that plane, as they say, build as you fly, as well as embrace that the career pathway is nonlinear for some of us, as it was for me. So I'd like you to take a moment and complete a statement. This statement is listed on the next slide. Students who attend your organization are learning skills to become, and you can fill this in with a skill or a work role. Please share it in the chat if you have a complete thought. Students who attend the YMCA are learning skills to become a critical thinker. If you're willing to unmute your mic and share, you have that option as well. I do ask that you use the hand raise feature. And this will allow Aisha to help us out. All right, so we have an answer in the chat. Students who attend youth enrichment services, the program called YES, are learning skills like critical thinking, problem solving, learning to ask questions, and do research in teams. And that can take them far. Those are skills that are transferable and apply to many career pathways. So we have another one. Students who attend Building Blocks After School Enrichment Program are building skills to be ready for the 21st century workforce. And this is Karen. Karen, do you mind saying a little bit more about the 21st century workforce needs?
So critical thinking, problem solving, communication, social emotional intelligence, all those things, teamwork.
Thank you.
And as far as the skills are technical skills, I mean, I have kids from kindergarten through 5th grade. So tech is going to change so much by the time, but I think it's just helping them to get over the fear of using it, or not that they're afraid to use it, because it's, like an appendage for them. They definitely are natives, not aliens. But yeah, we try our best to be good people.
Thank you for that. And you said something so important about the fear, right? The intimidation and fear that can come along with technology. I also hear that from our formal educators, that when new technology comes into the space of education and they are not the subject matter expert on the lesson as it relates to technology, there's a bit of intimidation. And so I'd like you to think about the opportunity that you have providing that before or after school, out of school time support, and helping reduce or allay those fears, possibly not just for the student, but also collaborating with some of our formal educators. Thank you. So by the end of this session, I'd like you to start to think about that concept. And you may not come to the final conclusion today, but leveraging ideas like cross-cutting concepts to ensure that the learning opportunities are robust within your program is really important. So I'd like to level set by defining technology. The next slide, you have an opportunity to think about what your common definition of technology is. What layman's terminology do you use when someone asks you, what is technology? Please use the chat feature, also hand raise feature if you'd like to share on camera. Very common word. How do we define it? Technology is everything. Our phones, our refrigerators, our cars. Yes, I agree. And it's in everything, right, Karen? So while those are coming in, the next slide, commonly accepted tools to make life easier. You are absolutely on point. And I can't imagine there are any wrong answers that are going to come in the chat. Technology is leveraging resources to improve efficiency and quality of life, a way to connect folks globally. Exactly. So here on screen, technology is the application of conceptual knowledge for achieving practical goals, especially in a reproducible way. The word technology can also mean the products resulting from such efforts. Now, those are tangible tools, as like utensils and machines, as well as intangible ones like software, right? Artificial intelligence, generative AI specifically, is a technology that has almost invaded education, and we're all trying to figure out its best and highest use. So on the next slide, there's a whole broad swath, a menu, if you will, of different technologies, emergent, some of them, that we're seeing coming into the education space. We're not going to have an opportunity today to take a look at all of them. We'll actually get an opportunity to take a look at three: virtual reality, robotics, and adaptive learning. But before we start to talk about the new marketing terminology, I'd like us to take a look back. And on the next slide, there are 4 technologies that were introduced into the classroom that you may or may not have been in that K-12 classroom when they were introduced. I'd like you to take a guess of the decade, maybe even the year, that the radio was introduced into the classroom. Please use the chat feature. AM and FM radio. 50s? It's a good guess. It's not correct, but but thank you for sharing that. Do you have any other guesses? 1932 with the radio. Silent films were also introduced into the classroom in the 1930s. What about television? If I was Bob Barker, 1939, which is really interesting because we saw technologies like the headphones in the 50s, whiteboards in the 60s, right? Whiteboard, 1960s, yes. Okay, what about Texas Instrument introducing the calculator? That was a paradigm shift for many, and still today, we're using Texas Instruments in the classroom for math. 1967. And this last technology, I'm not going to ask you the year. I'm going to ask you, what is it called? With the pencil and the dots. I see some coming in. Yes, Scantron. So here, these four technologies that since the early 30s have been in the classroom were used for audible as well as visual broadcast, calculation, and assessment. Calculation and assessment. We're still focused on those capabilities today. So on the next slide, I'd like you to think about these 5 points. There's kind of an ethos, a line of thinking that accompanies that ethos with teachers, and where we believe Pennsylvania industry deserves a world-class Pennsylvania educated workforce. We have top-tier higher educational institutions in West Philly often. I lecture at the University of Pennsylvania. The students in West Philadelphia don't necessarily see that educational pathway as accessible to them. So I want you to think about accessibility broadly. Then think about the equipment and facilities needed to expose your campers or your after-school time participants to a technology through your programming, the type of instruction and support that you need, safety and training, then funding and logistics, because we need both of them. On the next slide, there's an explanation. With accessibility, think broadly about space, equipment, instructional capacity. And then when we think about the details of it all, the technical equipment you need, the workspace that you need, any specialty protective equipment, then with the instruction and support, you need knowledgeable instructors and mentors. If they can come from your existing staff or your existing staff can be upskilled, great. If not, do you have the access to through network or the budget to support that knowledgeable instructor? Then think about the tools, training, and certifications if you need that specialty. And then the primary cost specifically of equipment. If this is a first Lego League competition, their fees, transportation, right? Think about those overall expenses. So on the next slide, this is Egypt, a high school freshman and novice rower who has found her sports. And I'm using air quotes when I say she's found her sport. I know that she's found her sport because Egypt's is my daughter. I am the mother of Egypt. We tried soccer, basketball, and volleyball. None of them were her sport. They didn't stick. But when she discovered rowing, I saw a spark moment in my daughter that I am doing everything I can to keep lit, right? To keep shining. This includes ensuring she has access first to a boathouse, right? The river, the body of water, is the medium that's conducive to the activity. She goes to a public school in Montgomery County, PA, Upper Marion. It's one of the only public schools I know of or that I've been exposed to that has their own boathouse. So there's boats that need to be maintained and in competitive conditions. If we want her to compete, there's access to coaching, transportation, logistics to events, fees to participate. Rowing isn't available to every school district and every student. So on the next slide, I break this down using those 5 points. The specialized equipment, the access to water, funding for maintenance and travel. And something that's really interesting about some activities is, like rowing, you need a primary skill in this case, swimming. There are young people in our schools and in our out-of-school time programs that haven't yet acquired the skill of swimming. So that would be a barrier to entry for them to participate in rowing. So let's say that you have a rowing program. Do you have a feeder program, a partner program that helps teach them swim? Do you have a YMCA that gives swimming lessons? And so when we think about these opportunities to create success through exposure, it's not a standalone one organization that can provide it all. It becomes more of an ecosystem approach. And I'm just happened to be, I don't know if you saw the Temple logo behind me as I was speaking on camera earlier, but I'm at an ecosystem convening as we speak. We'll break for lunch at noon, so I'll be able to go back with the group. And this morning, we've been talking about what you'll see on the next slide, connecting pre-K through 12 STEM learning in out-of-school time to post-secondary and STEM career opportunities. It's that broader zoom out approach to how our young people move through our community and over time have experiences that lead them to their purpose, their pathway, the desire for the next step. So as we move to this next slide, I want you to think about these 5 points. In your program, as it exists today, not with artificial intelligence or not with any additive 3D printing, the tools that you don't have, I want you to think about how you make your programming possible. I'd like you to think about the space, equipment, instructional capacity, the facilities, the instruction and support, the safety and training, the funding, and logistics. We're going to have an opportunity very shortly to move into breakout rooms where you get to answer each one of these points or inform each one of these points and talk about what it is that you need to do what you already do better, scaling, more capacity, more young people, right? Before we start to talk about additional technologies and introducing those, I'd like us to level set, just understanding where we are and what we'll need just to do a little bit better. So to help you while you're in the room, there's a QR code. If you would advance, it's going to be 2 slides. So the QR code is going to be on the next slide. So hold here for me. So it's going to be those 5 points, right? Yes, thank you. It's going to be those 5 points. This is what you'll see with the QR code. So now advance, and our tech support will open up breakout rooms for us. So to make sure that we're clear, you're going to inform all 5 of those points for the existing program as you have it, and share that with those that you're in the breakout room with. Right? We've already talked about how you use technology. Now we're breaking out how your programming is made to be accessible. And I'm watching as everyone's going into their breakout rooms. We'll see you in about 10 minutes.
Okay, all good, Nefertari.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So they're going to start coming
back in.
Some great dialogue that's happening in the breakout room across organizations.
Wonderful.
There's some talk about how an existing STEM mobile lab is being planned to expand, providing support to students who are displaced or homeless, that I found really, really interesting, thinking about technology as it is currently experienced in the home. Like I'm one of those people that has a smart washer and dryer, like Samsung, and it sings, and things like that, that students in that program may or may not have access to understand that's happening, right? So they're providing them with tablets, they're providing them with devices that maybe we can explore some of these activities. And I think everyone is back in the room, and I would love to hear from anyone who is interested in sharing first, just overall, the STEM programming that you currently provide. How would you describe your accessibility of space, equipment, and instructional capacity? And I'm just going to put this up on the screen for you to reference. That were the points that we were reviewing. So is there anyone that would like to share? Nia, are you willing? What organization are you with? And then the accessibility, how would you describe that of your current program?
Hey there. Hi, everybody. So my name is Nia Pettis. I work for the YMCA. I was sharing with Karen that I actually just randomly found this webinar. I'm not currently working in education. I'm on the IT team here, but I started my career at the Y working in after school, similar to Karen, first kindergarten through fifth grade, doing curriculum for the kids and things like that. So I can't really speak as well to the topic. The branch that I'm at now, they do have a teen tech center. So if I want to speak to something like accessibility, I'd say it's pretty accessible. You don't have to even be a member to gain access. I think that there's just not enough word out there for the teens to kind of get them into the building and stay. But the program is kind of going through a restructuring process. So they're trying to get the word out and get more kids involved. They actually are having an open house today. So if you have any Philly teens, send them to Columbia North on Broad Street. Starts at 4.
Thank you. Yeah. So Tom, it's not Tom that is with your youth programming?
Yeah, you know Tom?
I do. He's a part of our ecosystem and has told me about the robotics program as well as the teen tech program. I think he said it was like an Achievers program.
They are kind of different. The Achievers is a longstanding Y program, like a Y branded program across the United States. And they don't necessarily operate the same with the Teen Tech Center. They're a little bit distinct, actually. We could maybe rope them into each other a little better and across branches too, like the city branches could maybe partner and bring some of those Christian Street kids over here, West kids, so that they have access to the tools too. But yeah, that's great that you know Tom.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's wonderful to make your acquaintance now too, Nia. So I'd like to hear from any of you all that have been thinking about these 5 points about the instructors that you have, the instructors and the mentors. Do you have everything that you need, or is there a need with regard to the programming that you deliver and technology? So my thought is capacity is always limited. Bandwidth is always limited. We always need an extra set of hands and an extra hour in the day to get it done. So Caitlin says we could use, yes, we both need PD mentors. And let me open my chat. PD and mentors could use more partners and instructors. And so this is Caitlin. Caitlin, what type of partners are you in search of? Do you mind unmuting your mic?
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you. We're just strengthening the STEM components to our programs. I work for the Homeless Children's Education Fund in Pittsburgh, and we do and have done for a long time programming in shelters, in schools, and out of school, primarily in the out of school time hours. And we have relationships with colleges and universities to a certain extent, but not in the depth of the STEM fields like I would love to see. But we have some great, higher education, like you said, in the state and in our area. We have CMU, we have Pitt, we have these great organizations. So I think that's one area that we're hoping to build some more partners. We do partner with some enrichment focused organizations. So out in Pittsburgh, there's an organization called STEM Coding Lab and Citizen Science Lab. So we're partnering with those organizations to help build some of the curriculum, but the instructors who are actually going to be the ones on the ground doing the teaching. And we always send out volunteers as well, having them talk. And I heard someone say before about the fear of technology, like just being courageous to just try it out. And even if you don't know the answers to all the questions, being able to learn together and have comfort with that is something that we're trying to build.
Thank you. And I've heard that sentiment repeatedly. You're not experiencing it alone. If we take a look back to the slides, there's that menu of technologies. And there's a lot of them, and this isn't exhaustive. Thinking about how virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence is showing up in the classroom and even in out of school time spaces can make your head spin. And as I shared before, there are 3 technologies that we're going to explore, not in depth as much as just leave here informed today. Because when you look for those partners, when you look for those instructors and those training opportunities that you mentioned you need more of, there are people that are very excited about these technologies and would love an audience and would love to be able to connect with young people and preparing that next generation of technologists. So if we could navigate to the next slide. Virtual reality, robotics, and adaptive learning algorithms. Very, very similar to artificial intelligence with those learning algorithms. Next slide, please. So virtual reality is the first that we'll look at. How many of you all have used VR already? At this point, you wouldn't be early adopters any longer. But if you haven't used VR, you might be a laggard all the way to the right side of that adoption curve. It is fully immersive, allowing students to completely focus their senses on a teaching topic and experience it as if they were really there, as if they were really in an office or a construction site or another planet. It allows students' brains to create clear, detailed mental maps, helping them improve their knowledge and retention. On the next slide, you'll see VR being used by the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. They accredit this use to allowing them to create innovative learning environments, lifelike simulations that enhance collaboration, and that they can tailor to education pathways. Often their patients won't be able to go into the traditional classroom, so they use virtual reality to help them understand some of the concepts that trace to some of the requirements that these patients/students would have. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see that robotics in education. Many of you all have seen FIRST LEGO Robotics. I shared on the first webinar that I hosted with Poseidon. I'm on the board of the Philadelphia Robotics Coalition and just excited to see these young people engaged. They build, they break, they compete, and they win. Robotics is being used to teach students subjects while engaging them through human-like facial features and emotionally perceiving technology, right? So we're seeing robots being used as teaching assistants, tutors, small group leaders, peer leaders, and really there's a whole spectrum that's available to implement robotics into assistive learning. On the next slide, these are the kids that I was talking about, the RoboLancers in Philadelphia Central High School world champions in robotics. We're at the phase where we're working to figure out how do we take this out of school time excellence and support what they're doing in the classroom. So virtual reality, robotics. Our next technology on the next slide. Actually, I'm going to roll it back. If you're not in Philadelphia and you're in rural PA, there's still an opportunity for you to engage in robotics. And there are supporting points, whether they be a proof of concept, the skills acquired. Robotics is said to improve students' interest in not just STEM traditionally, but additive with arts, and help them engage across science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. They don't build these robots alone, right? The teamwork is always a central point, especially when problem solving. I popped into one of the breakout rooms and Aisha was talking about problem solving in a way where you might not know the answer right away. But do you have an understanding of the resources available? And do you know where to find the answer? Do you know who to ask? Do you know how to ask for help? So in these robotics enclaves, we're seeing students of all abilities, neurotypical, atypical, neurodiverse students in these inclusive spaces for learning. So now we will transition to the next technology. Wow. I'm going to back up again and give you a QR code. And this is for you to keep. I know some of you all are on your phones, but this QR code will actually take you to a use case that gives you some points on how robotics can be used to support out of school time and in school time instruction with citations if you need to share this. And Aisha, if the next slide is about robotics, I'm just going to close the session. But I do think that this one is, the next one is adaptive learning. And in this case, adaptive learning is very similar to what we're seeing when we talk about prompt engineering. When we're talking about training an artificial intelligence related algorithm, we're looking for the output to be fine-tuned or to be adjusted to the user, to support them learn more deeply, to problem solve more quickly, and to be tailored to a student's learning style. Are they visual learners? Right? Do they learn better listening to a TEDx than they would reading a case study? So it's based upon a student's reaction to the content that these algorithms tailor to the student's attempt in these real world use cases in some case. Thinking about the prompts that are used, the interventions that are put in place based upon the student's feedback. Right? And again, thinking about an inclusive learning environment, the student's special needs and abilities. So adaptive learning, I want to look at that just a little bit more before we advance. If you go to the next slide, we go back to our rower. There is a device called a stroke coach. It's in the boat with you. It gives you your stroke rate, your stroke count. It helps the rower understand how to better achieve peak performance based on a feedback loop, based on data, based on charts and graphs. After you leave the water, you can go and download your data and see what it is that you could do better. When you get past the 200-meter mark, your performance dipped. And being able to put this in a real-time scenario in the classroom would change the way that this rower thought about statistics and thought about mathematics. And so this out-of-school time program that is a scholastic rowing program could very well connect with in-class time learning, math problems, English, ELA, etc. You've heard of both of these programs. They are top of mind in priority, still standards. We're coming to the end of that adoption phase. And so thinking about, yes, STEM, but environmental, literacy, and then sustainability. The meaningful watershed educational experience is a perfect opportunity to take a look at project-based learning for our students. When we think about being out on the water, when we think about being near a body of water, there's life all around us, living creatures in the water, on the land, even thinking about how MeWe and rowing could intersect with engineering. Because often when you travel down the river, there'll be bridges. And in the case of project-based learning, students learn about the design, the development, and construction of real-world projects that they can then model through hands-on activities in the classroom or even out of school. Right? So the educational value of project-based learning is that it aims to build students' creativity and their capacity to be creative and to work through difficult or ill-structured problems, often in small teams. So on the next slide, we'll go back and take a look at project-based learning. So here are some of the areas, I won't read the slide to you, that it's said to be essential for a successful project-based learning experience. Which one sticks out to you? Where is there an opportunity in your program to invite in project-based learning? Or if you're already doing project-based learning and you're defining it that way, where is there an area that the mentors, the volunteers, the instructors, the partners that you mentioned can help strengthen your program? So using the rowing example as an opportunity to show how this inter and transdisciplinary opportunity can be formed on the next slide. This boathouse is accessible not just to rowers and not just to students that attend Upper Merion. It's actually available to the community. It's available to a YMCA in the area or a neighboring school. And students are learning about physics without thinking about it. They are managing risk without really thinking about it. And unlike a lot of projects where the goal is really to complete it, maybe even pass an assessment, on the next slide, you'll see that along with the experience of rowing, you have the competitiveness of rowing. And so students can participate and compete against other schools regionally, and this rower is heading to nationals and making her sophomore class project focus on environmental literacy at her boathouse. She's partnering with the chief science officer in her community, as well as the instructional director at the school. So we don't know, and we'll see this on the next slide, what the careers of tomorrow will be. We're not even sure of their names just yet. We know that technology is an integral component of STEM, and students can use it to apply to everyday problems, real world examples and experiences. And we want to ensure that they have the skills, tools, and resources to design their future. Before we close, I'd just like to revisit this technology adoption curve, because I do think it's important for you to know where you are. Some of us on the next slide are the early adopters, while others are in the late majority, maybe even laggard. And so when you think about a new technology that you want to adopt into your program, are you that early stage innovator or adopter? And what type of support do you need in order to bring that technology into your program? In many cases, they do look like partners when it's innovators. They could very well be universities that are helping you out. So just wanted to give you a little situational awareness there. And the next slide is a revisitation of the technologies. So I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you have or share any comments that you have before we close. Thank you. So for those of you that want to access today's Act 48 credits, there's a link in the chat for you to follow the instructions to do so. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, and thank you to Poseidon and IU16 for hosting this wonderful webinar.
Nefertari, I love how you talked about the connections to everyday life and how STEM can really reinforce resilience and a growth mindset and having students like process through. So I appreciate that, and helping students embrace that their failure is just a data point and can help inform their decision making. And the next session is going to be on June 12th. STEM Beyond the Classroom. Nefertari, we thank you so much for taking the time to share this information with us. And as you said, if everyone could just take a moment to complete the evaluation survey that Rachel was kind enough to place in the chat box. That's about all. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nefertari.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch, okay?
Rachel, do you mind holding one moment? I think we're still
Not at
working,
all.
but there's a message for me in the chat.
Oh, sure.
No worries. And this is Miss Barbara.
Yes. Thank you so much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you. And I just dropped my email address for you. I look for your message. Okay. Thank you all again. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.